Welcome to the Tap Room Exclusive. I'm Dean Zarbaugh. I'm here at the Brew Kettle production facility in Strongsville, Ohio. I'm with Jack Kephart and Justin Kerlin. We are on to the Kitka. This is another beer. It seems to me, for as long as I've known about Brew Kettle, which I was a little late to the craft beer game, I will admit. I was in California for a while, and I just didn't get the bug until pretty recently. But it seems to me, for as long as I've known about Brew Kettle, there's been White Raja and there's been Kitka. There's been the two big names that I know from your guys' place. And before I got back into craft and fell down the rabbit hole again, I'll admit that this was something that probably wouldn't appeal to me. But I'm somebody now that as I've gotten into this world, I've learned to appreciate styles that I might not have appreciated before. And this is a really nice, well-balanced chocolate coconut stout. There's not too much of anything going on. That's always with coconut. It's a very fine line for me because it has nothing to do with the quality of your product. It's always been a very well-made beer. Coconut for me is a very hit or miss flavor. You guys nail it in this one. I love this one.
Thank you. Yeah, coconut as well as most other flavors are tough to, because if you listen to everybody that gives you feedback, you get 180 degrees of feedback. Somebody will think it tastes like suntan lotion, and somebody will think, where's the coconut?
Yeah. And
so over the first couple years of brewing this, we went through various suppliers to give us that coconut and chocolate flavor, and it was really the first beer for us that was because there's a lot of flavor-derived beers now out there. So I think this came out in 2012. And so it was our first foray into, that kind of market. And we were just looking for something to do with the dark beer. So it's a milk sweet stout base, so there's lactose in it to give it a little bit of body and some, subtle background sweetness. And then the flavoring are naturally derived, coconut extracts and chocolate extracts.
And balancing these kind of flavors in the brews got to be a pretty difficult task. And from an outsider's perspective like myself, it seems like trying to get this dialed in is a pretty tough task to do every time. Am I right, or is it? Yeah, is it pretty much just kind of once you've done it, you kind of know what you're doing? No,
once we got it nailed down, it's fairly consistent. I mean, the only variables are, the quantity that that you get processed, while you're adding that, flavoring to it. So it's a dialed in process that we've nailed. We don't have to worry about.
And going to the beginning of this, you wasn't the market that it is today in that this flavored stouts weren't really as big as they were. Was it to stick out in that market? The reason behind coming up with this style is just to play with the milk stout style?
Yeah. I mean, that's always been one of my favorite styles back from when I first started, drinking beer, sweet stouts, milk stouts. So, yeah, it was. I guess you could say it was not necessarily inspired by, but I'm friends with Rick, formerly with Willoughby, and they had their coffee peanut butter porter. So this was kind of like, well, let's try something along those lines, but completely different.
And nowadays it was sort of revolutionary in that it came out, and now all of a sudden now you see a lot of these styles. Everybody's playing with flavored stouts and sweet stouts and stuff. So it was ahead of its time. Definitely an inspiration for the growth of what it is today.
Yeah. I always tell people it's my favorite beer we make. I mean, all the other beers that we have are great, but to me, this is, like you said earlier, it's very well balanced. It's not overly sweet. I'm not a huge fan of coconut either, because like he said earlier, it's it can taste very sunscreen ish. And I don't think you get that. I think the chocolate prevails over it, and then the coconut is very subtle on the tail end of it. And to me, that's probably the best way you could do it. And it's very well balanced. And so for me, I'm a situational drinker, but at the same time, I don't think there's any situation where I couldn't go, you know what, even on a hot day, I could crush one of those, because it is very kind of light in its body. So,
well, I see a lot of people still buying it in the middle of summer, and stout's not normally you're in the middle of summer thinking, that's not what you're necessarily thinking of, but that's that tells you the product that you have.
Yep.
Is people are willing to go out and get it in the middle of summer too. You got a really good product.
Yeah, for sure. And you're right. Our sales are pretty consistent year round with it. I mean, it is a much smaller category, so we don't, obviously we sell a heck of a lot more White Raja than we would Kitka, but it sells consistently, throughout the year. So it's a brand that we definitely are going to be, moving forward with, and as we transition into that can and bottle, like we talked about, we will be transitioning Kitka right behind that with new graphics and the whole 9 yards. So still the same price point, $10.99. So we feel like we're priced appropriately there, and it's definitely it's in our mainstays, for a reason.
Definitely. So, when do you have an idea of roughly when you can start seeing cans out?
Well, I would say that's probably going to be towards the end of summer, somewhere in the August timeframe. I mean, realistically, because we have this new facility, coming online, that's really going to determine when we can, go full on. We have to start with White Raja and then go from there, as we transition. But once we're over into that new facility, for us, that's really going to make a big difference, because it's going to give us about 2 times the brewing capacity that we have here currently at the production facility here. So,
and your own canning line.
And our own canning line, and we're looking into a bunch of different things. We're gonna, this year, I always say 2019 is kind of our setup year, but 2020 is going to be the year where you really see the Brew Kettle kind of making strides and starting to innovate a little bit, and starting to get into everything's going to be kind of nailed down by then. So but we're really excited about where that expansion into cans will do for us, and it's just going to open a bunch more opportunity.
Absolutely. Like we've been saying, take it more places. It's just a good idea with where the industry's been moving. Is this something if you're going to eat with it, do you pair this with a dessert, or would you go main course? What main course would you go with this, I should say?
To me, I mean, everybody likes to pigeonhole stouts into dessert because they typically have, but to me, I would cook with this. I would do any kind of a pork shoulder, or any kind of that you could braise with that, or even if you boiled it down and created made it a little bit thicker, and then kind of use it as a marinade. But I mean, I like when people do big kind of proteins with beers that they typically wouldn't do, because that to me means you're really stretching the limits. It doesn't take a genius to say, hey, look, if you had a coconut pie, it would go really well.
This would be like great with like a creme brulee.
It doesn't take a genius to do that.
Cool,
it's
man.
real
Thanks.
Easy.
Thanks for that insight.
You take that and you put a little coffee or something, and you braise a pork shoulder, and you make it cook it down. I don't know. There's a ton of. I'm not a chef, but I would tell you, I would be way more impressed by somebody using that with some kind of a protein than they would be with some kind of a dessert. And in this business,
like a pulled pork.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Just something that if you cooked with it, I think you could. A good chef could do a lot of things with that. I have to do a lot of beer dinners in my world, and so I've had a lot of bad desserts with good fruit beers or good stouts with fruit beers, and it's just one of those things where I like when people challenge themselves and try to take that and cook with some kind of protein. I think it's pretty cool.
Well, let's issue a challenge right here, right now. Throw out some recipes for Kitka. You can put it on my Facebook page at facebook.com/thetaproomexclusive. And post your best Kitka recipes. I'd like to hear some ideas of what's out there, and if you need some inspirations or something, let us know, because that's a good idea. Like, just to you can make whatever dish you want, but the one ingredient you have to have in it has to be Kitka.
And I feel bad for not knowing what it is, but they use it for something in
At the restaurants?
At the restaurant.
I will forgive you. You're not a chef.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, look, if the listeners have ideas, we're all about it. I mean, and if it's really good, hit us up with it. You never know. It might end up on the menu if it's good enough, So it's definitely something, look, we realize that our customers, our craft beer customers and our restaurant customers, they're very passionate about our beer as well. And if they're using it to cook with it and they can provide us with some, some help, like, we'll take it,
Absolutely.
We're not above it, that's for sure.
Absolutely. Is there anything about this beer before we get into my questionnaire that I might have forgotten to cover that you wanted to maybe tell the people about?
No, we're really happy with it. I think we struck a balance, as you said, and for you still get the something we strive for is for our beers still to have a beer, base. You can still tell it's beer whether we're fruiting it or adding other flavors. That it's still inherently beer.
And it is. It very much is. So this questionnaire was inspired by Inside the Actors Studio. It was 10 questions, and we'll just get right into it. What is your favorite style of beer to brew and to drink?
So they can be different.
Yes, unless they are the same. Some people both enjoy brewing and drinking Doppelbocks. I've had that answer because it's a pretty easy beer to make. So,
I would say Marzen Oktoberfest is kind of like my holy grail of brewing.
Nice.
And I would say it's almost it's also what I like to drink too. I mean, I like hoppy beers. I like sour beers, but if I'm sitting down to just really just enjoy a beer or two, sitting around talking with friends,
I can geek out about Marzens, man. That's one of my absolute favorite styles too. Going to the opposite end of the spectrum, what's your least favorite style to drink and to brew? Nothing that you necessarily have against the style, but it's just maybe it's a bit of more of a pain to make.
Wow. Probably to drink, it's probably holiday beers. I mean, it's not that I hate them, but it's just I want beer.
Yeah,
I want beer to be predominant. As far as making beers, almost any beer that's a challenge is something that most brewers probably want to brew.
Right.
So it's probably the most mundane beer. It's probably whatever beer you're brewing a lot of.
Right.
So unfortunately, sadly, that's White Raja. But it's not. There's nothing against it. It just becomes
absolutely.
It's just a routine.
Yeah, you've done it so much.
Exactly.
Well, you love the shandy so much. You love brewing that.
Yeah, that's a quick beer to brew. It's a quick
turnaround time really
because
nice?
it's lower alcohol, so
so
it makes for a shorter brew day.
Yeah, that's true. What profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
Ooh, I've already been a graphic designer, so I'm done with that. I love carpentry. I mean, I think I'm okay at it. I mean, I couldn't make a living at it because I just take too long to do anything, and I'd starve to death, trying to make a chair or table that took me 6 months to.
But I did it.
I made a chair.
What profession would you not like to attempt?
That's an even tougher
I mean, politician. You can't win.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I
don't know. God, I would. That would have been. I almost think, wow, that would have been interesting to put as what I would like to. Just to beat myself over the head with it.
That's right.
Probably anything that would require excessive, continued schooling. So I'll just throw lawyer out there.
Yeah.
Because who wants to be a lawyer?
Nobody.
No offense to any lawyers that might be out there listening.
Disclaimer.
Yeah.
Please don't sue me. No. What?
Good catch.
Which?
Not that there's
You used to
anything
be a
wrong
lawyer.
with it.
Didn't you? Which hurdles did you personally face getting into this business, and how did you overcome them?
Basically, just getting your foot in the door, and like I said, I had a lucky break. Having that happen.
Yeah.
So, I missed the first wave, back in the early 90s, and then about the time I caught on, it was, right after 9/11, where, breweries in town, right, 15-20% of the breweries in town closed, from that. Maybe not because of that, but,
No, but
just
the economic.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And yeah, so I can't really say that I've had any like brutal hurdles other than, just at the peak of my growth phase, there was kind of just a down, a low tide in the brewing industry.
Just ride the waves.
Yeah.
What has been the most interesting trend you saw in 2018 in the craft beer industry?
You could help with this one.
I mean, to me, it's the swing back away from hops and towards lagers and towards sessionable, drinkable yellow beer, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, I think obviously the hazy phase is there, and it's it is what it is, but there is a solid amount of new lagers entering into the market.
Yeah.
So that was pretty interesting to me. I mean, we saw it coming, but it's this year it's really picking up steam.
Absolutely. On the opposite end of that, least interesting trend that you saw recently?
Too many hazy beers.
Yeah.
I mean, it's getting to the point where it's like
just saturation.
Yeah, it's just over the top. Don't get me wrong, I get it, but it's sometimes to me being able to brew a beer with that amount of flavor that's crystal clear. That's the real challenge in it.
I'm gonna say this, Justin. He's not gonna like it, but throwing like gummy bears and Fruit Loops into mash and
see what comes out. I agree, man. I'm with you.
I mean, and I guess as a pub brewer, you have the ability to do that because you're selling small amounts of it. But
right. At the end of the day, man, give me a beer. What is one piece of practical advice you'd give someone that is starting out in this industry?
Learn, just go someplace and at least volunteer and. Just for a little bit. There's a lot of poor guys that, are, opening places and, if you find the right niche, the nice small community, you might be able to make it, but they're opening these, smaller breweries and they're thinking about, putting beer in package. So I would say, A, learn a little bit first, and then B, serve a small community. And don't think about putting beer in package.
Yeah. And to me, I would just, follow that up by saying don't be afraid to challenge the limits of what beer is and what beer can be.
Right.
Because I feel like the best new brewers are the ones that are out there challenging what the public says is okay with beer and not. And the beers that stick around, the beers that have staying powers are the ones that didn't listen to that and have challenged what beer is and what beer can be.
Absolutely. If you could send a message to yourself 10 years ago, what would you tell the younger you?
Just 10 years ago?
Just 10 years ago.
If it was like 25.
Let's go 20.
I have to count back and see what would 25 be. 10 years ago. We'll just stick with 10. Probably try to, convince or just whisper in the ear of ownership here, just because we didn't know, just to get into cans earlier. I think that would have been a great thing. I mean, it's nothing that anybody did wrong. It's just, it would just been nice to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And finally, what or who has been the biggest influence in your brewing career?
I'm going to say a really good friend of mine who passed away recently. He was like my homebrew mentor down in Akron by the name of Art Beal. He was a storied and medaled homebrewer, won in the amateur, homebrewing awards, circuit, I guess you could say. The American Homebrew Association has an annual nationwide competition, and the brewer that garners the most points for medaled beers wins an award called the Ninkasi Award, and I believe he won that in 1998. And that was about the time that I was at least joined the club that he was in, the Society of Akron Area Zymergists. And so he taught me a lot. I mean, he taught me basically, everything I knew to geek out and and become a professional.
And anything you guys want to get out about Brew Kettle or yourselves before we head out?
Not really. Just we're expanding. I don't know if we obviously didn't talk about that, but we'll be putting a store in Mentor here coming up soon, and then there'll be one in Avon shortly thereafter that.
Nice.
So a lot of big things coming with the Brew Kettle. Like I said, 2020 is going to be a big year for us. You're going to see a lot of changes coming at the end of 2019 and then into 2020. So. Thank you guys. Thanks everyone out there that has ever supported the Brew Kettle. We obviously appreciate all the love and support you guys have given us over the course of the last, 25 years now. And, we're looking for some big things in the future. So any questions, please feel free to reach out to any one of us through our website, thebrewkettle.com. We'll be more than happy to try to answer them for you.
Thank you guys for your time, and enjoy your day. Tune in next time for another all new episode of the Taproom Exclusive.